Welcome to the Masculinity Unmasked Podcast with hosts Greg Styan, Max Wilson, and Linda Tilson.
Okay, hello and welcome everyone to another episode of the Masculinity Unmasked Podcast, the fortnightly conversation which dives deep into the issues impacting men today. We're here to have those conversations you might not be having elsewhere. Honest, open, sometimes uncomfortable, but always important. Today, got an amazing title for you. Deciding what you want when you have everything. I think we can all resonate with that to a degree. I'm very lucky today to be joined by the amazing Natasha Clower, who is a men's coach. There's a little bit more to that, but that's the easiest way to describe it. So, Natasha, thanks very much for joining me today. And let's start by hearing a little bit more about your story and the work that you do.
Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for having me. This phenomenal topic and very passionate and centered to what I do. As you mentioned, I am just like you, life coach, focusing on working with men. My goal is to guide men through the transitions in their life. Usually, it's post major liquidation event that they have. Post exit. So it's that transition from making money, creating wealth to actually living and enriching life.
Wow. That's an amazing place to start, isn't it? And I love that title, deciding what you want when you can't have everything. We had a really good discussion off air about this. There's many different ways that you can do it, many different spins. And I guess that's a thing for you as well, isn't it? Is when you get to that point, when you're creating money, the number one source of stress in the world. There's many different angles that you can go. What's the most common angle that you get? Is it a positive angle, where people are looking forward to a new start or looking forward to something, or is it a lot of worry, a lot of stress? Obviously, coaching can be used in both angles of that. So tell me a little bit more about that.
I would say it's just by the nature of the profession. People that show up at our door, they have problem. I would say they might not define it as a problem, but that's why they are seeking the solution. It's rare that someone would be completely in the la la land and happy, and they will be seeking a coaching advice. So having said that, that gives me a little bit of a skewed perspective, but any transition in life, whether you are committing to a partnership or a marriage, whether you're deciding to have kids, whether you're deciding to retire or retire not in the traditional sense, you're still in your 30s, you exited, you've made the millions, you've made yourself proud, and now what? It's a transition in life regardless. And even though the nature of our world is change, right? Everything changes in our life. Nevertheless, for us to grapple the change and being adaptive to it in a very quick period of time is a struggle for most. So what I find, no matter what the stage of income people have, their first one and foremost is, how do I not screw up my kids? So the clientele that I work with, they usually already have kids. Those kids might be little or elementary school or completely moved out. But I usually work with dads, guys who want to have that legacy. They're looking to their kids as their successors, and they're looking for them to be their heirs of their legacy, their wealth, their family dynamics. And that first stage of transition is when you pause from doing, working, to thinking, how do I translate that? I have not seen my kids. I'm going to pause, reconnect with my kids. And sometimes it feels like it's too late, that they've missed the boat, that the kids are still consider their mom as the first source for advice and solution. And it's heartbreaking. And they're looking for that pivot. In other cases, they feel the dynamic that they had in the family was absolutely fine. They have not lost the bridges, or the kids are still little. So it's a delightful time for them, but they're worried about, when do I talk about money? How do I approach that I might need to put the kids in a private school and with private security because I'm worried for the safety of my child? How they going to compare to other classmates? How they handle the discussion that we went on a chartered plane for our vacation as opposed to take a car ride. There is all of that kind of confusion and not problem, if you will, but it is worry underneath that I find the guys come my way. The second grouping, and I think prevalent, again, I don't want to say problems because it's more opportunities of what people need to transcend, where their journey is personal as a soul kind of journey. And that would be with going cold turkey. As of what I described, they go on a treadmill again and again and again. They're working their left hemisphere really to the T. They studied, they perfected, they're fantastic at what they do. And here they come to a different environment, or they're about to go in the environment where the significance is gone because there is no title at home. They're just a dad or a husband. And so there is this identity crisis. But along with that, stopping and not doing and not having that demand on your time is stressful. It's extremely stressful because we are discussing not just identity, but a routine. How do you approach your day? All of the things that you didn't have time to look for and address comes to the surface because now there is this time, the void, and all the guilt feeling is surface up. It's just it's beautiful time for me to guide people through it so they don't spend years, because I listened to some founders who exited and they tried to take time off, and then they go back in to the same wheel and they call it, oh, I just took a sabbatical. Well, maybe you just couldn't figure out how to land it. And, all is good, but what I advocate is for every transition in your life, make it about your choice. Make it conscious and knowing why you're doing it and being very clear about it.
So powerful. I resonate a lot with that with some of the clients that I've had in the past and some of the people that I've worked with. We all wear many different hats as well, don't we? Dad, businessman, whatever that is, the husband, there's so many different ways to see it. And I guess you can't have the same approach or the same success wearing every hat, especially if you're so successful in one arena, you might not be as successful in the other. And sometimes that might be difficult to find. Male ego, there's lots that goes into that. I think there was a term that you used, and I've not heard it for so long. I had to remind myself what it meant. Shirt sleeves idea, where 70% of families lose their wealth by the second generation, 90% by the third. Tell me a little bit more about that. I had to go back and remind myself what that meant. And I've not heard that for years.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's quite prevalent for what you do, isn't it? And what you've been talking about. So tell me a little bit more about that.
So there has been one study that calculated somehow that by third generation, majority of wealth originated gets dissipated by third generation. So a guy will go and make money, wear a shirt to the office to make money, and then their kids, his kids, the assumption is they coast or whatever, they use up the money. And then those kids, basically the founder's grandkids, will have to put the shirt back on to go to the office to make money. And it seems the study been done, I believe, in the 70s, but then quoted and requoted by family offices, by everyone else. And so it became kind of the norm. That's how it is. I don't know that there is a recent study or if they've done segmentation that at certain number of millions doesn't apply. However, one thing for sure, that concern is number one. As soon as family makes money or has money, how they transfer that wealth, not just from financial and taxation perspective, but how do they raise heirs, right? Not just kids, but those capable and wealth conscious and those that will not squander it away and preserve the legacy that you've had such hard time building.
That's amazing. There's so many different angles that we can go with this, especially with that title, deciding what you want when you can have everything. What springs to mind to me is I come across a stat a few weeks ago that 80% of lottery winners file for bankruptcy within 5 years. Okay, basically because they don't have the tools to self-regulate, to manage themselves, they squander it. That also is quite similar to what you've said, isn't it? In terms of that shirt sleeves idea, that maybe they just don't quite have the tools. They've had an upbringing which was to a degree unregulated, or they don't quite understand, or they can't adjust to living in another way. And I guess that's hard. That's incredibly tough, isn't it? Like actually giving those skills, being able to put in place those frameworks. Is that the sort of advice that you give them? Do you give advice on maybe what they should do with their children, or what they should where to send them? Tell me a little bit more about that, because there's so many ways that we can go with that.
Yeah. Well, I'm certainly not a parenting expert. So that's not what I'm trying to teach of how to parent. My goal is for guys to understand the core of what they are, what their values are, and where the programs, biases, opinions, and beliefs that they hold stem from, and which ones they should leave behind as a luggage that they no longer value. But until they realize what needs to be sorted out and left behind, they unconsciously pass it on. So, for example, our natural as a society have, regardless of the gender, we all exercise our left side brain, linear thinking, past, present, future, fear-based avoidance tactic. And as such, we think that if we get more tools, if we load more tools to us or someone, our children, they will be capable of handling everything. So we send them to the best schools, we send them to the good universities, thinking that that is the core that makes them successful. That might not be, at least in my world, that's not what I work with, because anyone can read a parenting book on emotional attachments and practice that. That's not the problem. The problem or what I work with is that kind of deeper layer of why do you believe certain set of rules? Because everything we say is a belief, and we have a choice to adopt it or not. But we're not conditioned to that way, right? We will feel that what we believed, what my mom and dad told me, that is the core truth. Like one of the prevalent one is hard work. You work hard, you play hard. There is so many beliefs and positions about how the working hard ethics is good. However, when you step back and say, well, what does that mean for my life? And what does it mean for my legacy, for my kids, my grandkids, and so forth? And we start discovering that if from the very beginning, you've been as a kid conditioned that working hard is the core of you as a man, being a provider for the family is the core of who you are, then it's no surprise when you stop providing, as if you stop working, you will feel that disconnect. I don't have value, because that's what been programmed into you. But is that true? Like, is that the truth you want to carry? And if so, you will probably be very stressed from the fact that your children don't need to work. Your son is no longer a provider because what he needs to do is manage the wealth. And you might not see it as providing or contributing. And therefore, it creates that disconnect. But the kid is brought up in an entirely different environment. His basic needs of shelter, food is satisfied naturally because you provided for them, right? So evolutionary, your kid is at the highest step than you've been, or your predecessors, your dad, your granddad was. And so that creates that gap that the soul, if you will, evolutionary, using Dr. Maslow hierarchy of needs, your kid at the higher one, you should support them to soar further, because that's as far as you've got. They have further to go. But if your wiring is, I need to provide, I need to earn in order to have value, you're going to take them from that space. You're going to yank them down and say, you need to learn hardship. You need to earn your own place, yada, yada, yada. That without that, you don't have value. You don't have identity, instead of elevating them from the step where they naturally are.
Wow. That's so powerful. That's amazing. There's so many ways that I can resonate with that. Obviously, in business, one of the things that was told me a long time was to work in business and not to really see it as monetary value, but to see it in value of purpose, if that makes sense. So you can take away that. And it makes me think about some of the things that you've said there. Something else that I know as well, that wealth without purpose often leads to higher rates of depression and anxiety, especially amongst, the wealthy. I had a friend last week that unfortunately decided to take his life. He committed suicide. On the outside, he had everything, and everything was going well for him. But obviously, there were some internal struggles, So that depression level, that anxiety is there in a lot of men, isn't it? And that brings me back again to that question, the big one at the start, deciding what you want when you have everything. There's so many different ways to go with it. For me, it's how I would try and coach it, or even for me and myself, I'd see it is Mount Everest. So Edmund Hillary climbed Mount Everest. He got to the bottom. When he got to the bottom, he was the first guy to ever climb Everest, by the way. When he got to the bottom, the first thing he did was look at the next peak, and he went again. That's how I sort of treat my life, and that's how I try and coach others. Is you just start another journey. It's another door open. When one closes, another one opens in business or life, whatever it is. But like I said, purpose. Looking forward. But the other one that it goes with, when life stands still, that is what midlife crisis is, isn't it? Surely, when like men go and buy a Porsche, or they squander lots of money on something new, or they look for a new dopamine release in relationships or whatever, like that's what we're here, isn't it? I guess that's what you're about in your coaching, is the guidance. Are you trying to get them more towards that first part, Sir Edmund Hillary looking for the next Everest, or is it more about helping them navigate that midlife crisis? It's a great question. What are your core tips then? What are your take homes? What do you recommend to your clients or the people that are listening?
There's a lot to unpack here. So
Absolutely.
let's take one step at a time. So the idea that purpose is your Mount Everest is one element. Let's pause there for a second. That linking of happiness, or the likelihood that we're going to be happy and fulfilled if we reach our Mount Everest. So that's confusion number one, because the purpose, there's so many videos and all talk about, are you living your purposeful life? Frankly, and that's what I believe it's all BS, because at the soul, at the conscious level, the purpose is one, is for you to be happy, for you to experience the joy, because that is the essence of who we are. And all of those journeys, all of the yearnings that we have to climb that Everest, to climb that mountain, or do this, is in that seeking the fulfillment and seeking the joy. If you understand that joy is your purpose, it's not to give joy, is to experience the joy, is to reunite with the essence of who you are without any obligation whatsoever. It's almost kind of becoming selfish in a way. But that sense of joy, reconnecting with inner light and inner intuition, if you will, some will define, can be done without climbing the mountain. It can be done in a simple house, in a simple life, day to day, just making a meal for your wife, sitting down and just having a dinner. That everyday thing is what I believe many people miss. They go to work, men or women alike. They go to work to get that endorphins, dopamines of I matter, I am loved, I create value, I am significant. This is a challenge for me to tackle. I will exercise my brain and my power. I will, create something. And then they come home and it's nothingness, right? It's mundane. It's the laundry, it's the dishes, it's the cooking. It's like where we're going to go here and there for dinner or meet with friends. But at the end, it's a somewhat benign conversations about everyday life. There is no sense of significance and fulfillment. The happiest people I know is who manage the joyful activity here at home where there's nothing happening. And the outside, the mountain climbing, is the just cherry on the top. It's additional, it's not replacing it. And so a lot of this transition of how to discover what should I have when I have everything, what people, and it's different for everyone's journey, and it's not dependent on the age. It's where your journey of life is. They will realize that I have everything that I ever wanted. That's exterior. That's on the exterior. It's things, possessions, and so forth. You will get to the point in life where not necessarily that they don't matter, that you don't appreciate, but you will have a different relationship with those things. And then that wouldn't be enough because you will not connect with that joy, with the inner essence of joyful everyday life. And that's where then the journey becomes of, do you want to explore your entire, that exterior life, the external reality that you have created is based on that left brain thinking. Half of your brain, the right side, the one that gives you expansiveness, the one that gives you the intuitive insight, that gives you the flow, that creates this Einstein level of ideas in 20 minutes on demand for you to know before the events occur. All of that capability we all possess, but we have not been trained. There is no MBA to go to how do you leverage your right side of the brain that works in presence. It doesn't know the past, future, or any of that. It doesn't calibrate based on the fears or biases or programs your family carried. It's an entirely different operating system that stays dormant. And a lot of times of deciding what to do next when you have everything else is just that. I see the guys, they will go for biohacking, right? I optimize the business. Now I'm going to optimize myself. I'm going to live longer. I'm going to extrude the health and vitality. And they go all in there. Then it becomes like, okay, well, now I'm healthy. I go to the gym. I feel fantastic. I might have tried the meditation, which is also just completely different thing for go-getters. Like they're trying that and not doing it the right way. But anyway, then it becomes my family life, like my dynamic with my wife. That becomes apparent that it is an identity crisis there as a family unit. And they go couple therapy, sex therapy, what have you. And then from there, they will pick something else until they come to self, that they are the internal mechanism of self-optimization is what they haven't tapped into. And that becomes the next Everest, if you will, not necessarily literal, but in some sense, it can be more challenging than anything else they've done in life.
That's amazing. I had the hair on my back of my neck stand up. I've had similar journeys with clients and in myself, and there's a simple take-home activity, which I've done myself when I was coached and that I've done with others, is to take yourself out of the situation, to look at your life from the outside in. And a task that I do with someone is I ask, a client or someone I'm coaching, how do you want people to look at you? How do they think you look at you? Write 3 or 4 things. Okay. So, you're going to guess what your friends, your family, how they're going to describe you. Okay. And then you go and ask a friend, someone you can trust, someone who isn't your wife or someone that isn't your son, someone that you respect, to describe you in 3 or 4 words. And then to see if it matches up. Then to see if it is the same, So let's say that you go away and you're going to say, you're going to think that people are going to describe you as, athletic, friendly, kind, all those personality types, all those interesting characteristics, but it comes back. Alcoholic, workaholic, stressed, et cetera, et cetera. That's how people perceive you. That puts you in a great situation to reframe that, So for me, in the past, I would have been seen as Greg, the alcoholic, workaholic, slightly overweight. I wanted to reframe that as Greg, the good husband, Greg, who plays golf, Greg, who likes art and music. But it's a simple reframe of an activity. But actually, you need someone to look from the outside in. You need someone who knows you, a friend, or whatever it is. And that's just a simple take-home activity. Natasha, just before we wrap it up, Are there any other take homes, any other activities, maybe like journaling hacks or something like that? Even anyone who's listening can take home.
I wanted to expand on the advice that you gave. The 360 review, what I heard of, it's used in corporate world a lot, and they call it 360 review, where you describe what you stand for, what your brand is, personal brand, and how people perceive you. That is a good aha moment. The second step after that is I would suggest for people to take pen and paper, because it's a different neurological wiring when we're holding the pen and prescribing ourselves, and imagine themselves at being 90 or 100 or 110. If there is this, oh my God, I don't want to live that long, that's your clue. Like, there is something already perceived in your mind why it's so bad. But take as far towards the end of life that you can. So, and look at your current life, current moment, and say, what it is I feel so passionate and I am so into it that if I'm 90 and I'm looking back, I would say that was waste of time. That's minutia. Versus, what are the things I am not doing that I probably will regret when and a lot of people don't do that simple exercise because they think it's kind of, they will not know what the answers are. But from the quantum physics perspective, the past, future, and present exist simultaneously. And therefore, if you take your pen and pencil and on a paper write something, what will I regret when I'm 90? And just pause and hear what you write down what you hear. Don't scrutinize it, and just keep writing. Keep writing without psychoanalyzing it. Finish writing and then go and read it. And if that is challenging, another one, just take a pen in a non-dominant hand and try to scribble. That opens up, and then switch to the dominant and continue writing.
Wow. That's amazing. I'm going to go and do that after our chat today. Natasha, thank you so much for joining us today on the Masculinity Unmasked. Where can we find you? Where's the best place for anyone who's listening to this to find more about you and more about your work?
Sure. Well, I am on YouTube, X, LinkedIn as NatashaClower.com. Those kind of three sources they can find me. I am posting on Instagram, but that one is not my main focus. So I hope I will see some of your listeners on the YouTube channel.
That's great. Absolutely. Natasha, thank you so much for joining us. If you resonate with the topic or anything that we shared today, if you have any ideas on things you'd like us to talk about in the future, please do get in touch with us. We'd always love to hear from you, and you can find our details in the show notes. That's it from me until next time. Take care, everyone, and see you soon.
Thank you.